Hey, Em. How you doing? It's Miguel. So today is the 25th of November, 2018. And I hope you're doing okay. I hope you had an enjoyable Thanksgiving holiday filled with family and friends and fun. Yeah. So let's see, what am I up to lately? Well, lately I've been focused on two things in my life which I'm taking a great deal of pleasure doing, and that is education and exercise, the two E's. And so I'm thinking about ways that I can expand my exercise ambitions in particular. And so I'm thinking about ways to do more exercise. Today, I'll probably go for a 2 hour walk, which is pretty normal for me. I might also I might even go to the gym, the YMCA, and do some stair stepping just to give it a try. I haven't really spent a lot of time on a, a stair stepping treadmill climber, but it occurs to me that that might be a really practical type of exercise to do. Could be pretty helpful and might be a nice way to burn some extra calories, right? In my spare time. Yeah. Today I've been thinking about ways to become more healthy. I really am fortunate in that I pretty much have everything I want. I'm really healthy, and overweight is not a problem for me. I've basically fixed the any overeating issues I might have. And for me, so now the question is about energy expenditure, right? It's about how I can sort of maximize energy expenditure, make that expenditure work for me in ways that I want. So that, say, I can shape my body so that it has the appeal that I want, and maybe get those six-pack abs, right, that everybody wishes for. I'm pretty much there. I just need a little bit more definition. So, and then that's exercise, and then there's education. And in fact, I started reading a really interesting book. I might have already mentioned it to you. I'm reading this book here called The Story of Psychology, which I'm really loving. Morton Hunt is a really good writer. I really appreciate his work. And we're going through some of the Greek philosophers and what they thought about psychology of mind subjects. And so we're going over people like Thales and Democritus and Herodotus and all those great personalities. And I'm really enjoying one of the main points that this book is talking about is that pre-Greek philosophy, pre-Greek thought, the idea was that thoughts arose in our minds as the result of the spirit world and gods who placed those thoughts in our heads. And that theory, in my mind, has a lot of explanatory power. I grew up as a Christian and read the Bible a lot. I fell away from that when I was around 22, 23 years old. So, but what I can remember I really like this idea about the ancient idea of thoughts arising in the mind because they were placed there by gods. It makes so much sense when one reads the sort of wisdom literature, how a lot of wisdom literature is about that. It is clearly just sort of an elaboration of the idea about how thoughts are put into minds by God. One good example is visions, right? A lot of prophets had visions of the future, dreams that were placed in the minds of men by God Himself, right? And how, heroes got ideas about, say, how to make Jericho fall by God telling them how to do it, right? Marching 7 times around the walls of Jericho or whatever. And if you don't have those, I mean, it just makes so much sense that really a lot of religion might really be just an elaboration of this belief at the time that thoughts were put in minds by spirits. I mean, if you think about it, even the idea of things like exorcism, right? People who are possessed by spirits. It totally makes sense that tales of possession exist because of this belief about how God's put thoughts into minds. And it's sort of a religion. When you think of it from that perspective, religion just becomes sort of an elaboration of this idea about where consciousness arises. What is the soul, right? Well, the soul is put into bodies by God, clearly, or is an example of spirit, right? It's kind of funny how the religion is basically a psychological explanation. It's a psychological theory, right, about how thoughts arise. And you know what? I'm seeing it even in modern day people. These ideas about how emotions sort of move between one person and another through a spirit world type. I do notice. I talk to people about how they believe that emotions are catching. People can say, or maybe people are intuitive about what another person is emoting because their emotions are being transmitted through the ether, right? From one person to another, or through a whole crowd. Emotions transmitted through a whole crowd, through maybe the spiritual world. At least that's the sense that I get when I talk to some people and their beliefs. And it's funny, psychology has gone so far. So today, psychology is making leaps and bounds ahead of people's forward, and really improving our understanding of what's happening in our brains. And that there's a lot of people, maybe 80% of people really are still stuck in this ancient idea that God's put thoughts into minds. And it's tragic. I think it has to do with, I think, ultimately poor education. And and what I think too is that what I'm noticing too, and this saddens me a little bit, people who are trained as psychotherapists sometimes have holdovers from these these ancient ideas of how thoughts arise in the mind. And then you know, they get online or on YouTube and they start talking about it. It's sad. It's sad. So I notice a lot of confusion in psychology about how thoughts arise and how emotions arise and what moods are. And, people have, it's funny how people move away from mechanistic explanations because they think that maybe spiritual explanations are more interesting or more true or more amazing or more wondrous. It's really interesting, this whole dichotomy between the natural world and the supernatural, and how there seems to be this, at least among common people, a preference to explain things in a supernatural way. And there seems to be like this tendency to do it. And it persists and it goes unchallenged quite often. These ideas go unchallenged. And you know what? I need to do a better job of challenging those ideas too. But there is this idea that, say, a natural explanation, a naturalist explanation of the world is somehow inferior. And what's funny too is that in educational circles, the naturalistic explanations are the dominant explanations, and everywhere else, right? There's this spiritual dimension that exists, unproven, contradictory, and it's just everyone's got these spiritual understandings of how the mind works, and psychology and spirit, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it goes on even in the self-development, self-help fields, right? The self-help genre of books. There's a lot of sort of supernatural descriptions of what's going on in the mind. And I don't know if they're intentional or not. I think a lot of it is unintentional. And it might be that I'm just reading into what other people are saying about psychology and what happens in the mind. Now, without saying much, I am convinced by the evidence of the naturalistic models of how minds work. To me, that is solid science and evidence-based understanding of what's going on in between my ears, right? And I'm just basically experiencing a form of amazement that the majority of others who are sort of outside the academic circles really accept these spiritualistic, supernatural explanations, like, and I don't know if this is interesting to you or not, Emily, but I don't know, maybe it would be. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm just glad that I'm not confused. Like, oh, it's a relief. What a relief. I'm not confused. That's nice. So anyway, I'm enjoying this book. It's a huge book, but it's well written. I think I'm going to read it every day. At least I hope to. It's really good. Dang. I might even read a few passages with you here in this session. That might be nice. So, or not. So one book that I'm sharing with you now is this Panatti's Extraordinary Origins of Everyday Things. And yesterday we discussed a little bit about what the origins of shampoo, right? The 1890s Germany, where chemists came up with the detergents that they needed in order to deal with the sebum oil from the sebaceous glands on people's scalps, and how these detergents didn't really get manufactured didn't start getting manufactured until the 1930s. Yeah, good stuff. And that in prior years, even the Egyptians were using citric acid, right? Infusions of fruit in soap to help them cut the fat, right? Cut those oils in people's hair. And there were also other caustic solutions like potash and other kind of ash that was used later on. But we're going to go far afield from shampoo, and we're going to go into another thing that you and I can relate to, and that is toothpaste. I figured that we'd learn a little bit about toothpaste, and the reason why partly is you and I use toothpaste every day. We've been focused on our teeth lately because we both have braces, right? And I hope you're really getting a lot of enjoyment and use out of the water flosser that I sent you. Let me tell you, I am still loving the water flosser, the Waterpik water flosser that I got. It is great, and I'm going to continue to use it once or twice a day for the rest of my life. I'm just loving it. It's keeping my teeth so clean. And anyway, so I started thinking about toothpaste, and I was curious about the origins of toothpaste, and I wonder if you might be curious about it too. So here we go. So the subtitle here says toothpaste, 2000 BC, Egypt. Okay. So wow. Looks like the first indicators of toothpaste existed 2000. Well, actually, it's already 2000. That's 4,000 years ago back in Egypt. 2000 BC. So let's read about toothpaste and its origins. The first toothpaste mentioned in recorded history was devised by Egyptian physicians about 4,000 years ago. Now, just saying that phrase boggles my mind. 4,000 years ago. There's a new generation every 20 years. So in a person's lifetime, that's 4 or 5 generations if they live to be 100, which as humans go, we don't do that so well. We might make it to 60 or 80, so maybe about 3 generations per human lifetime. And how many generations is 4,000 years? That's amazing. Hey, Google, what is 4,000 divided by 20?
The answer is 200.
200. So we're talking about 200 generations of people. 200 generations prior to our generation when they originated toothpaste back in Egypt. Now that I think about it, 200 generations is not that far back, but still, 4,000 years, that's saying something. Highly abrasive and puckeringly pungent, it was made from powdered pumice stone and strong wine vinegar and brushed on with a chew stick. Okay. Wow. Of course, what we know today about enamel and how delicate it is, using the pumice sounds like a reasonable thing to do. Today we have abrasives that are harder than our own enamel to help make our teeth shine bright and white. So that makes sense. Pumice, though, seems a little bit gritty to me. I don't think I would want to brush with pumice stone. Strong wine vinegar sounds like a really bad idea. Acids have a tendency to etch the teeth, and that can be a problem. You don't want to start dissolving your own enamel. And then brushed on with a chew stick. By modern standards, it was considerably more palatable than early Roman toothpaste made from human urine. Okay. Why people have this obsession with drinking urine is beyond me, or even using it. In my view, urine is a waste product. And I've been hearing stuff on the internet about all this. I don't see what the focus is, what the interest is. And it looks like that's interesting. Roman toothpaste was made from human urine, which in liquid form served also as a mouthwash. Oh my goodness. Ay, ay, ay. 5th century Roman physicians maintained that brushing with urine whitened teeth and fixed them more firmly in the sockets. Okay. See, I'm so pleased that we have evidence-based medicine today where dentists, get their recommendations from clinical studies. Otherwise, who knows, we'd all be swigging urine on the recommendation of the like they did on the recommendation of the 1st century Roman physicians. Now, upper class Roman women paid dearly for Portuguese urine, the most highly prized, since it was alleged to be the strongest on the continent. It's funny how disconnected to reality some of this is. Dental historians believe that may have been true, but only because the liquid came by land all the way from Portugal. Urine, as an active component in toothpastes and mouthwashes, continued to be used into the 18th century. Holy cow. What early dentists were unwittingly making use of was urine's cleansing ammonia molecules, which would later be used in modern dental pastes. Okay, yeah. So ammonia, I'm not that familiar with ammonia, but what I do know about it is that it is basic, and of course it is corrosive, and I imagine that somehow substances are able to be dissolved in ammonia. With the fall of the Roman Empire, dental skills and hygiene rapidly deteriorated in Europe. Oh, things got worse than using urine as mouthwash. They got worse. For 500 years, families palliated their own dental aches and pains with homemade poultices and makeshift extractions. The writings of the Persian physician Razes in the 10th century mark a reawakening of dental hygiene as well as a breakthrough. Razes was that first doctor to recommend filling cavities. He used glue-like paste made of alum, containing ammonium, and iron. Well, it says alum containing ammonium and iron. I think that's an error. I think that needs to be aluminum and iron, and mastic, a yellowish resin from a small Mediterranean evergreen tree in the cashew family. At that time, mastic was the main ingredient in varnishes and adhesives. Sophisticated as Razes filling material was, drilling out a cavity to accept a filling required a high degree of dexterity in the dentist and superhuman fortitude in the patient. The major drawback of those early drills was the excruciatingly slow rotation of the bit. Oh my goodness. The dentist, holding the metal spike between his thumb and index finger, manually worked it back and forth, all the while forcefully bearing downward. Not until the 18th century was there a mechanical drill about the size of a handheld clock, and with the clock's inner rotary mechanism, and not until George Washington's personal dentist John Greenwood adapted his mother's spinning wheel to rotate a bit was there an even moderately rapid foot-pedaled dental drill. Unfortunately, the intense heat generated by its quick rotation was itself a drawback, although this was compensated for by a shorter period of discomfort. Whereas Greenwood's drill rotated about 500 times a minute, modern water-cooled models spin in excess of 500,000 turns a minute. Okay. Wow. 500,000 turns a minute. That's 500,000 cycles per second, or 500,000 hertz. Wow, that's pretty amazing. So we have really come a long way. And, I can just imagine sort of putting some kind of wedge inside a hole, inside a cavity, clearing it out with that drill, that primitive drill, and then filling it with alum and mastic. Pretty amazing stuff. I'm so glad that dental technology has improved. I mean, heck, I've got the water flosser. I've also got an electric toothbrush, and there are some amazing products now being developed by companies like Colgate, and products to help us improve the health of our teeth. So we're making really good progress, and I happen to happen to remember having read like newspaper articles that maintaining your teeth is really important, particularly flossing and getting that bacteria out from between your teeth and from around your gums. Apparently, that bacteria can somehow find ways of getting into your bloodstream and affects things like your risk for heart disease and other problems. So, thankfully, we're on the right track when it comes to, improving our dental health. Yeah, and I think also too, there's a new recognition about how important dental health is. So that's good. We really live in a much better time. I'm glad for it. In fact, when I was a kid, I got a lot of cavities. I don't know how many cavities that you got. My guess is you don't have any. But when I was a kid, I did not go to the dentist very often. I think you go every 6 months. That's great. When I was a kid, I didn't go unless I needed to go. And when I went, basically I had cavities. I probably, during my time as a youth, I probably maybe had 6 or 7 cavities. It was a good amount. I think I might have even at one time at one visit had 2 cavities filled. Interestingly enough, at the time, mercury amalgam was used to fill the cavities. And I personally have no fillings in my teeth because all those cavities were in baby teeth. That's right. And so I'm so pleased that, I've got no mercury in my mouth. That's great. I have no fillings in my mouth. And in fact, if I were to ever have a cavity, I think that what I would do is I would buy I would select. They've got this new, I think it's like an enamel filling material, or no, maybe it's not. It's a different filling material. And it's not an aluminum, it's not a mercury amalgam. I think I'd get the newer filling material. Of course, the reason is because, mercury is not necessarily the best thing to have in your body. It's a heavy metal, right? And you don't necessarily want to have one of those things, one of those fillings sort of off-gassing in your mouth or whatever. Now, here's the thing. What I am talking about and speaking about is hearsay. I admit, I have not read any clinical studies about mercury fillings. And this is only what I am surmising. What I'm saying is only what I'm surmising based on hearsay. And, what I've picked up from conversations with others and conversations with my mom. My guess is that, the concern might be overblown regarding mercury amalgams. I think I've read some counter arguments about it. I'm not sure, of course. I'd have to do some research and find out about some of the, the clinical studies that have occurred in the last 10, 20 years. and what they say about film. Okay, so I wanted to take some time out and, I told you about a book that I was reading. I wanted to talk a little bit about what other books I'm reading right now. And I might have mentioned them, like I'm listening to an audiobook about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I mentioned that. I was about 3/4 of the way through. I'm also listening to another audiobook. It's the first book in the Twilight series about vampires and werewolves. And I'm listening to that audiobook. I've been reading a little bit more fiction recently. That's not to say all the nonfiction is gone and has been tossed aside. Of course, I'm reading The Story of Psychology, which is definitely nonfiction. I've also got a few classes that I'm working on. For example, I've got my machining course, and I'm reading that textbook. In fact, I've got to read 3 chapters today and do the homework for 3 chapters. So I'm going to be stuck at home doing homework a lot today, preparing for this week's classes and homework turn-in and the final exam that'll be happening late next month. So got to sit down and do some desk work. So what other books am I reading right now besides that? Well, in fact, I've got a list of them right here. So, one book I'm reading is called Make Time. It's about productivity. And essentially the book is about working in a distraction-free way. And, it's sort of, I've been using it. It also talks about like the Pomodoro method of using a kitchen timer to sort of set aside a time when you're highly focused to do a job, to do some kind of work. So I've been doing that one. What other books am I reading? I'm reading a book about acceptance and commitment therapy and love, which I'm enjoying. I'm reading quite a number of books. Anyway, then I haven't finished that book called Choice Theory, A New Psychology of Personal Responsibility, I think, by William Glasser. Yeah. And then I'm also reading Acceptance and Commitment Therapy for Couples. So, I'm reading a lot of interesting books. And 3 of those books right there are related to psychology, right? This one and those other ACT books. Oh, I also am taking another course related to motivational interviewing, which is a topic I'm really enjoying. Again, it's another subject related to psychology. MI is the acronym for motivational interviewing. I might talk about that once or twice. And then I've also got a subscription to Skillshare.com where I'm learning how to do Photoshop. So there's never any lack of things for me to learn about. In fact, I was talking about sort of like that 2-pronged strategy I've got right now, which is to focus on exercise and education. And I'm definitely doing that. I'm also focusing on work through improving productivity and things like that. So anyway, I'm doing really great. I'm really happy, and I feel really fortunate that pretty much all of my life is satisfied. Basically, nearly all of my needs are well satisfied. I've got this real sense of abundance right now, where there's just really so much that I could be doing that I'm actually having to sort of stop and sort of even reject ideas that are perfectly good ideas that I'd follow through with, but reject them because there are slightly better things for me to be doing. So, you know, I really feel privileged to live like I am doing today. Just, you know, there's just so much good around me right now. It's just, it's a, there's just so much good in terms of my exercise, my education, and my work. Things are just going so well. I do feel just really pleased by everything. So I figured that right now we'd go into our question and answer period. So this question and answer series is about me answering questions that I found in a Kindle book, an ebook. And I figured I'd just go through each and every one so that you could have some insight into who I am and what I'm thinking about and what my beliefs and positions are. And, you could just get a sense of who I am more than you have already. So let's go ahead and do that. So, question number 389. Have you ever served your country? Okay, I think that question is getting at whether I've been in the military. And the answer is no. I have never been active duty military. Have I ever served my country? Well, I think everybody serves their country in some way or another. By going to work every day, you're serving your fellow, your fellow community members, right? You're helping them. If you work in the grocery store, you're helping feed their families through even something as simple as organizing the shelves or working the cash register. So, and you know what? It also serves the world. Yeah. There are a lot of other ways to serve your country. For example, one is just by being a good citizen, right? Voting and paying bills and paying taxes, right? Those are ways that people serve their country. And yeah, sure. I think I do that. So question number 390. What, if anything, don't you like about your own gender? So I'll read that question again. What, if anything, don't you like about your own gender? Okay, well, now I can only talk about gender stereotypes. Or I guess I could talk about gender as I behave in a gendered way. Here's the thing about gender is that it's my belief is that gender is learned. Gender is about cultural conditioning. It's how women become women and men become men. And so, when we talk about gender, in the past, I recognized that it was very polar, right? There were males and females, or more than that, there were men and women. And so what I'm doing here is I'm making a distinction between sex, genetic sex, and gender, which is more a cultural conditioning. So that's the distinction I'm making right now. So the question might be, if I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, what, if anything, don't you like about your own gender? I think, what don't I care about or like about stereotypical male enculturation? I don't know. There are traits of the stereotypical gendered masculine that I like and things that I don't like. And I'd rather talk about the things that I like. The thing is, though, that a lot of it is a double-edged sword, right? A lot of this gendered talk is, their traits, and this is true with any trait, they have benefits and costs, right? For example, the stoic aspect of masculinity is great in a lot of ways. though there are cons related to that. A lot of those cons have to do with sort of, low levels of emotional intelligence. you know, uh, that can be a problem. If a person, emotional intelligence isn't necessarily emphasized in the masculine stereotype. Thankfully, yeah, I want to say that these rails that people are moving within, when we talk about feminine and masculinity, sort of like the roads that they're driving on. Thankfully, the polar aspect of like you're either feminine or masculine, thankfully that's dissolving away, and there's more of what I'd call neutral gender talk, neutral gender behavior, neutral gender dress, gender neutral, pretty much everything. And I'm really grateful for this change, because I think both women and men really desire to have flexibility in the way that they behave. And sometimes there's not a good fit between the way a person wants to act and their chosen gender role, right? And their, the gender behaviors that they've learned since their youth. Sometimes it's not a good fit. There's a lot of confusion too when contexts change. There's a lot of uncertainty about how a man or a woman should act. And even in relationship too, there's been a lot of changes. Our culture is changing so fast now that, I don't know, I'm really pleased with the extra freedom that it's given men to behave. And certainly women have been enjoying the extra freedom that changes in the feminine gender have occurred over time. For example, more women are in the workplace and they're participating in politics and they're investing money and things like that. Great changes, taking control of their full fertility. These are wonderful things. Men too, the masculine stereotypes are changing as well, thankfully. They're loosening up. Men can cry now, and they can, or at least in some contexts, and they can be emotionally intelligent, which is great. And men also, I think, in general, their dress is improving. It's becoming a lot more flexible, a lot more informal, which is great. Lots of colors of clothing that men are able to wear now that they weren't able to wear 20 years ago, let me tell you. Like today I could wear like lime colored jeans or cherry colored jeans, and I can get away with it, even in the workplace. Whereas 20 years ago, no way. No way. It would be less accepted back then. So really pleased about this changing of culture as it relates to gender. I'm all for it. It's going to make for a lot more honesty in relationships and a lot less stress and tension. And I already am feeling relief about how people can communicate better with one another, and how it just frees up us to act in ways that are more natural to us. So, that's good. I don't think I even answered the question. I did touch on some of the things. So, what, if anything, don't you like about your own gender? I did touch on a few things, related to emotional intelligence and related to fashion. So anyway, next question. Question number 391. What new country would you live in if you were ever exiled? Okay. So, if all my family and friends lived in the United States and I was exiled from the United States, well, chances are I'd want to live relatively close to my family and friends if I could, so that I could visit. So, I'd guess maybe Mexico or Canada. Here's the thing, too. I have a real preference for warmer temperatures and tropical climates. And so maybe I would move south to not just Mexico, but maybe southern Mexico or even Costa Rica or Panama. Yeah, I think that would be pretty reasonable. If I didn't care so much about warmth, I don't know, maybe a Mediterranean country. I don't know. Well, England would be an option. Here's the thing. I haven't done a lot of travel, so I don't know, say, the suitability of other countries very well. I have seen nice things about Australia. That might be a neat place for me to visit. I would totally go live in Australia for a little while. Otherwise, I don't really have that much to say. I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. Okay, next question. Question number 392. Which college or university would you want to attend? Oh, well, let me tell you. Any college or university I would love to attend. As you know, I'm a bibliophile and I love to learn. I have this lifelong learning, this penchant for lifelong learning. Man, if I had any college that I could go to at all, boy, the options just multiply in my head. I think, depending on the circumstance and how I got the money to go to college and how I got my time freed up, I can imagine myself going full time and say, even in like a Allen Hancock college would be fine. For me, education is mostly about my own self-discipline and my own interests. And, keeping close to family would be important. But, I'd be happy to go to UC Santa Barbara or Cal Poly up in San Luis Obispo. I would love to go to Stanford. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing if I could go to Stanford. I'd love to go to UCLA. Just totally love to go to UCLA. Another one, San Francisco Medical School. I think there's like a University of California, San Francisco. Oh yeah, I've been there just to walk around and enjoy the medical library. That would be amazing. I'd totally love that. So these are just notable universities that I would love to visit and attend if I had a chance. Like, I don't know much about the East Coast schools, but I think it'd be fun to at least visit an Ivy League school like Harvard or Yale. To me, that sounds like a lot of fun. Learn about their history. I would be happy to go back to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. That would be awesome. Universities all over the world. I have an interest in learning more about Oxford in England. What other universities? There aren't any real other universities I'm focused on. Maybe there are others in Europe, maybe in Paris, in France, perhaps. I don't know. I think realistically, though, if I got like $10 million, I think I'd probably just go to college. I wouldn't mind going to like the University of Washington. That sounds like a neat place. I've actually been to that campus. I used to live in Seattle, Washington. That'd be neat. I think though, if I had like my druthers and I had $10 million, or I actually had the freedom and the time to do it, I think UC Santa Barbara would be just fine. I'd be happy to live down there and go to college there. That'd be awesome. It's got a beautiful campus next to the ocean. I've got a lot of friends there in the local area. And that would be neat. One thing I noticed though is they don't have like a PhD in clinical psychology there at UCSB. So that would actually be a problem. You know, one thing I would like to, one of my majors would probably be psychology because I already have a deep, abiding interest in the subject. I might have to go to like a UCLA or something and do some PhD psychology work down there. I'm asking myself, where is the nearest PhD in clinical psychology to my home right now? And it'd be one in California, I think. Probably somewhere in LA, maybe LA. Anyway. Oh, UCSD, University of California, San Diego. Oh man, that would be an amazing place to go to college. I've been there, of course, visited there, an amazing campus, so beautiful, wonderful library. As you can tell, I've got school on the brain, right? My eyes, there's a twinkle that starts in my eyes when thank you for that question. But you know what? Right now, I'm actually pretty satisfied doing what I'm doing, basically being a part-time student at a local community college. You know, right now, it's the best I can do with the resources that I have. Next question. Question number 393. Describe your best day ever. That's a good question. Describe my best day ever. Golly. Well, my best day ever would probably involve a workout at the gym. Yeah, a workout at the gym. Just a really satisfying, strong workout where I make progress. By the way, I make progress at the gym nearly every day, a couple times a week. So I know that would be included just because I enjoy it. Another aspect of my perfect day would be connecting with either one person or a group of people, probably a small group of people, 2-3 people maybe, connecting with them somehow on a deep level, emotionally, intellectually. So that would be the second item. It would be, number one would be exercise. Number two, and not in any particular order, another would be connection. And then maybe another thing would be learning, right? I would learn something new that would just open up a whole new door for me in some way. Just a revelation of some kind of knowledge, either psychological or some other kind of knowledge that would just, so it would be related to a skill that I could use every day and would just, that I could benefit from and reap amazing benefits from. So I guess those would be the three things. You know, it would involve exercise, education, and connection. Yeah. And part of that would be spending time with you, Emily. Absolutely. If I could get in, 2 or 3 hours, I mean, really, if I could get in 2 or 3 hours spending time with you, wow, that would be an amazing day. If I could do that, if I could connect with you and connect with someone else, or actually just connecting with you would be fine, and exercise and get this amazing jaw-dropping insight through education, I couldn't ask for a better day. Just couldn't ask for a better day. That would be a day at the top of my list. Yeah, of perfect days. Yeah. Okay, next question. Question number 394. Describe your worst day ever. Okay. My worst day ever. You know, I'm realizing that I could answer these questions in two ways. Number one would be my theoretically worst day or best day evers, and then actual for worst day and best day evers. I guess I'll talk about the theoretical. What would be the theoretical worst day ever? Well, first of all, I think it would be a day that would involve me learning about having some kind of disability, permanent disability. And it might also have me feeling large amounts of pain and separation from others, my family or friends. So that could definitely be one of my worst days. So maybe getting like a diagnosis of something and feeling a lot of pain and feeling disconnection from others, that would be rough. And I think that would be all that would need to happen. What could be worse than that? Pain and learning new information about, say, long-term disability or long-term problem. What could be worse than that? It just occurred to me that none of the things related to, say, my best day ever or my worst day ever relate to having money or not having it. Isn't that interesting? It just occurred to me, which is great. A lot of people would say, oh, my best day ever would be if I won the lottery, right? I wouldn't necessarily call that my best day. Or if I lost all money, again, that wouldn't necessarily indicate that would be my worst day. So isn't that wonderful? It's wonderful that doesn't come to mind. I think that's great. It's not a central concern of mine, and that my main focus is education and connection, and also good health, right? Because as I defined it, my worst day would be a compromise in my health, a serious long-term compromise in my health. That could definitely be my worst day. All right. And how my best day involves an improvement in my health. Wow, that's pretty amazing too. So now, maybe I should get to the point about what actually were my best days and what actually was my worst day. I'll have to get into that another time. Anyway, I'm going to start wrapping things up, Em. And as you can tell, I could probably go on these ideas for hours. I mean, I could easily talk for 2 hours or 3 hours. I think you'd get tired of it. I'm going to try to limit myself to 1 hour. Em, I just want to say how much I enjoy having you as a part of my life. I'm really proud to have such an active, athletic child. I know that you're in track and field and you go running 3 times a week, and to me that's amazing. I'm loving that, and you know what? I'm feeling inspired to run more too. I was thinking about running in the Santa's Run on the 1st of December. That's just coming up real soon. That's like coming up in like 5 or 6 days. So I think I've already trained for that and I'm ready to go. And anyway, I hope, I just am glad that, you appear, at least from a distance, to be living an amazing life, and one filled with athleticism and intelligence and travel all over the world. And I just want to say how pleased I am. I'm so glad that you're exploring this world and exploring, your physical fitness, and you're working really hard in school, working hard with dedication and focus, and I really am pleased to see you living your life. To me, it's making me feel joy inside, joy in my heart, to know that you're out there, making your best life come true, making your dreams come true, hitting your goals one after the other, and it just makes me happy and proud. I want to let you know about it. I love you, girl. Bye bye.